Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast. We're talking all things Manchester City here from the Manchester Evening News, and today we're talking about Manchester City's 1-1 draw with Chelsea. Now, I've thought about this game a few times since full time, and I still don't know what to make of it, whether it was a good game, a bad game, a good performance or not. My name's Joe Bray. I'm joined by Simon Bajkowski. Si, it was a bit of a weird one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I stumbled. I take so many pictures at games and then most of them never see the light of day. A picture I took when I was waiting in the press conference was the stats off the BBC website that had possession City 71%, City 30. I think these are the key. City 32 shots to Chelsea's 9, but 5 shots on target to Chelsea's 6, which kind of tells you that yes, City had most of the play and, bombarded Chelsea's goal, but not necessarily in an accurate way. Whereas the few chances they gave up were, good enough to test Ederson and test the keeper. So it was one of those games where no one could complain if City had won. But equally, if, say, Ederson hadn't made some of the saves that he made, you could turn around and say, well, it was understandable why City lost. There was, some refereeing decisions that the team and the manager weren't happy with, but that wasn't why they drew. That wasn't why they dropped points. They just ultimately weren't good enough to win, really, despite a generally good performance.
Well, this is it. I think Guardiola and other players like Kyle Walker and Bernardo have said the performance was good, but there was just something missing. And it felt like Chelsea came with a very clear plan, which was to sit back, give the ball to Cole Palmer, let people run past him and just play the ball into that channel. And it was that sort of left-back channel on City's side that resulted in the goal. There was a couple of chances before. If Nicholas Jackson could control the ball, they'd have had a 2-0 lead when they were 1-0 ahead. It felt a bit too easy for Chelsea just to pick them off. And yeah, Chelsea are Chelsea at the moment. They've got good players, but maybe not the best unit. But I thought the plan was quite effective. And it gave City sort of the challenge of having to abandon the game plan really in the second half. It felt like City's plan was just hope and get the ball to good players and hope that they do something. And the goal was kind of reflective of that, because it was a bit shades of Istanbul, really, wasn't it? It sort of broke loose to Rodri and he just put his foot through it a bit less scientifically than in Istanbul, but it wasn't a sort of a free-flowing move, and you got Haaland missing chance after chance, and it felt like it was going to be one of those days. And I do think a draw was fair, given how both the teams played, and I know those stats make it look like it was heavily weighted in City's favour, but something was just off a bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and Walker came out afterwards, didn't he, and said, we have to attack teams at the Etihad. And the thing is, they did. I feel like what Pochettino is very, very good at getting his teams to do against Guardiola City, what he was at Tottenham and what he is now at Chelsea, is kind of anticipating how aggressively City will press them, but having the players to play the way out of it. A number of times Palmer and others were able to kind of play through the lines from their own box into City's half and get some space down that side. And it was the same in the 4-4 at Stamford Bridge. Like, City pressed really well. I don't know. I think City pressed really well. But credit to Chelsea, who did really well at playing through them. And in that sense, you have to give credit for Chelsea for doing that. And then as well, City did miss a number of chances. Only 5 on target. How many did Erling Haaland put off target that he should have done better with? Because let's play devil's advocate. Haaland scores that easy header in the first half and that sitter in the second half, and it's 3-1. And we're talking about another game in which City haven't been perfect. They've conceded again, but they've won the game. And everyone's saying, they're going to waltz away with the league and whatever. So as much as City dropping points gives hopes to everyone else, you can't really expect Haaland to miss those chances that he missed every week. And as much as City didn't play that well, certainly up until they conceded, they were still kind of, had Haaland scored the goals that everyone expected him to, it would have been a comfortable win.
I think it was one of those games that had all the ingredients of a City defeat or a draw, where City aren't at their best. They've got a few key players out. They're conceding an easy goal on the break, which has become a bit symptomatic recently, hasn't it? You've got Haaland not playing as well as he can and missing those chances, and it gives the opposition hope. And they took that chance very well on the break. And you've got Raheem Sterling, who knows what City are going to do inside out, and he looked, for a player who didn't celebrate, he looked quite happy to score. And I think him and Cole Palmer and Conor Gallagher, we commented on Conor Gallagher at the game, didn't we? How sort of quietly effective he was.
Despite it was just his socks. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was... I mean, Kyle Walker would be proud, wouldn't he? But it's...
Yeah.
No, I just thought that it felt like Chelsea were going to go away with a 1-0 win, and it was going to be a City battering them. But it's just nothing. It's not going to go in.
Yeah, however, I would say as well that, like, sat at Brentford and Mark Flecken's having a worldie and Brentford are 1-0 up, and you're thinking, this is going to be one of those days, and it wasn't. And you sat at Copenhagen and City have total control, and then Edison gives the ball away and it's 1-1 all of a sudden, and you think, this is like got another Champions League just silly throwaway written all over it, and it wasn't. And yeah, they didn't do enough to get the 3 points against Chelsea, but I think it was the signs of a kind of more resilient City side that have, they've come back from behind to win the last 4 away games in the league. So they are getting better when they do go behind at coming back. And yeah, they only managed the 1 goal against Chelsea, so it was a draw. But the chances were still there that they should have won, even though it wasn't the best performance.
Do you think, and we asked Kyle Walker this, is it an issue that City are conceding first so often? I think Walker said we can't wait for an action to get a reaction, and as you said, he said that City don't want to sort of let teams come and establish themselves at the Etihad, and he doesn't know why they're conceding first, but it feels like it's becoming increasingly common, or it feels like it's individual mistakes as well. As the Edison one at Copenhagen, easy balls over the top. It's never sort of a free-flowing move, is it, that gets a goal against City? It's often just a direct goal or a mistake.
It should be an issue, but it's not. I think it's 11 clean sheets in 37 or 38, which is like a terrible record if you're trying to have as much success as City are having. And yet, if they win the game in hand, they'll be 1 point off top spot in the league. They pretty much got 1 foot in the Champions League quarters. They've got Luton away in the FA Cup to make the FA Cup quarters. So, they've conceded 26 goals in the league in 24 games, which, isn't that bad. Arsenal are top with 22, Liverpool 24. So, they won't be happy with the number of goals they are conceding. But apart from this Chelsea game where they missed several good chances to get the win, it hasn't really been impacting on results. It kind of was around, the Chelsea 4-4, Tottenham, Liverpool, that run of games, they should have got more points from. And they weren't good enough in either box. And you can say that again on Saturday. So the issue, I suppose, is are they kind of one-offs that won't matter, or against the good sides, and City have quite a number to play in March, including Liverpool, will that habit of conceding goals not be enough for them to overturn that with the number of goals they score?
It should be a problem, and I think BT or TNT Sport were trying to not make it a problem, but say this is the only negative stat we can find about City at the moment, and it's that clean sheet one. But it feels just like it's a bit of a persistent thing that City could be a bit better at. And last season they were so good in defence, and the fans sing about the best defence in Europe, but it doesn't feel like they're as solid this season. So, and Walker was quite clear that he wants improvement in that area. He also said that it's up to the strikers as well to press better and the defenders to make blocks, and it was a team effort. It wasn't just the 4 defenders who play, but it feels like they could be sharpening up, but at the same time, like you say, on another day they win 3-1 and Haaland scores those 2 chances. Touched on Haaland, definitely not his day. He looked, I mean, for the first time I've ever seen him, he walked through the mix zone at City and he just looked dejected and didn't want to be there and just wanted to get out of there. It felt like a day for him where it just was never ever going to go in, was it?
That was just because he saw you.
He's making a good habit of just completely blanking me whenever he sees me. So
yes, it was one of his poorest games for City. I think we do have to take into account the death in his family that's just happened. I don't think anyone can say how much of that of an effect on him that has had, but you definitely can't say, oh, it's had none. But aside from that, he just wasn't as. The thing is, you talk about sort of TNT raising one of the rare City weaknesses. Heading is one of Haaland's weaknesses, and had those really good chances come at his feet, you think he would have taken them. Yeah, he missed that volley in the second half from that fantastic City breakaway when Foden squared it to him, and he got it all wrong. But I think there was a bit of mitigation in that he couldn't fully see the ball from the way the Chelsea defender was in the way, and then there was that one shot that he had that Doku played him through, and it was deflected, and it was a good save from Petrovic, but maybe if it hadn't been deflected, it would have gone in. I think the 2 worst misses were the 2 headers, and headers are something that he's been working on for like at least a year, kind of just trying to improve. You remember at Old Trafford in the derby, he sort of missed one header at the end of the first half and then scored at the beginning of the second, and then as he was walking off with Guardiola, Pep was trying to sort of like give him a lesson in how to head a ball almost. And Pep said on Saturday he'd never give him advice on how to score, but heading is Haaland's one weakness where he would like to improve, and he's trying to improve but isn't there yet. So the game kind of exposed the one aspect of Haaland's play really that isn't up to standard with the rest of it.
I think though a lot of the first half chances, especially, I was running our blog and I was writing, okay, he's missed it and it doesn't look good, but the ball was a bit behind him, or like that volley was a very hard volley to do, and they weren't easy chances. But I think that second half header, he'd made so much space, and he scored those headers before for City. That was the one where City needed to, and that was the moment where you're thinking, oh, maybe this isn't going to be City's day, because they were waiting for that chance, and then it came along, and suddenly the man who scores all those goals doesn't do it. But yeah, like you say, he's got those personal circumstances. I still think he's maybe a little bit rusty coming back from his injury. He doesn't feel like he's at peak Haaland just yet.
I think if you want to be an ultra optimist as well, like I watched it back and I can see, I knew when it was coming, but like seconds before it came, I thought, how on earth is he going to find the space to get this header with no one around him? And, it owes to the quality of De Bruyne's ball, but also owes to Haaland finding space in the box like nobody else. And that is what he did last season. And like a lot of his goals look simple, but in fact, it's that kind of like world-class anticipation that puts him where the ball is going to be that no one else can match. So, City would always rather they were creating the chances for him and he was getting himself in the position to score and wasn't scoring than he wasn't getting in the position at all. So, yeah, like his finishing kind of cost them 2 points, but it's made them so many points over the last 18 months. And you would think, starting on Saturday, he will be back to what he does best.
This is it. You can afford him an off day. If anyone can have an off day at City, you can afford Haaland, because he's turned so many points into 3, hasn't he? So it's one of them. And if you're looking at sort of collective responsibility, then other players miss chances as well. And
exactly.
City shouldn't be conceding the goal they do, and it is a sort of a collective game. And speaking to Walker, he didn't touch on that explicitly, but you got the impression he wasn't just looking at any individuals. And he also said it wasn't down to the players who weren't playing. It was, with the manager picks a team, it's
a good job he wasn't looking at individuals, given he got skinned by Sterling for the goal.
Like, he didn't mention that.
No, but as you were saying just before, like, City will want to kind of improve, and last season had this amazing defence. They didn't really have an amazing defence by this point of last season, but it was just starting to come together, and it came together by taking Kyle Walker out of the team. And I'm not saying, Walker should definitely go, or was particularly bad on Saturday, but it was notable how much better City looked in midweek with John Stones. And once John Stones is back fully fit, he is surely a permanent starter in the team, as is Diaz, as is Ake, which leaves one space for Akanji. And, Akanji's got a bit of flack for Saturday. And the notion is that he, a lot of people think he just can't play the John Stones role. And he can't play the John Stones role as well as John Stones can play it, which is kind of why it's called the John Stones role. However, when he was kind of further back in defence, I thought Akanji was very good and made some important blocks and tackles and interceptions. So, Akanji was really important to winning the treble last season, probably more important than Walker, and was in the team for those kind of really important matches, playing out of position or in position. So, if there's one spot left in the team between Akanji and Walker, it's not a given that it's going to Walker. But as you would expect City's defence to get better once Stones is back in, you might see kind of attitudes towards Akanji shift again once he's doing more of the stuff that he's comfortable with.
Well, you have eaten into one of my questions for the second part, which was Akanji versus Stones, but we'll roll with it. I think if Akanji was doing that on his own and John Stones wasn't doing that position, he'd be getting far more credit, because he can do that role well, but because he doesn't do it as well as Stones, it looks like it's not working as well. But I think when you're asking City to play exactly the same, they miss Stones so much on Saturday, and there's a couple of times where Guardiola was really at him, or like trying to coach him from the sides, because he just wasn't making that same pass that comes naturally to Stones. But yeah, like you say, when it does work, he's the one who played the ball in for Bernardo in Istanbul, and that was like on the edge of the area, wasn't it? He can play the forward passes, and when he's in the groove, he can do it. I would say that yes, Stones is integral to that back line, and I don't think that Chelsea would have got the joy that they got over the top through those channels if Stones is there, because Stones is putting pressure on Palmer or whoever's playing that ball. But I just always think that the defence is a bit better marshalled when Stones is there. The transition between 4 at the back and 3 at the back is a bit more seamless when it's Stones rather than Akanji.
Yeah, and that does beg the question of Guardiola. Like, if Stones can only play one game in a week, is Chelsea in the league more important than Copenhagen in the Champions League? Maybe. But also, it sort of signals to the fitness issues that Stones has had all year, really, where he's not been able to just put a run of consistent starts together. So, hopefully that will change going forward.
And that probably doesn't help Akanji either, does it? Because if he's playing some games in sort of the hybrid midfield role, some games as centre-back, possibly right-back, some games on the bench, he probably doesn't know whether he's coming or going. So, you've changed my opinion slightly. I was ready to come on and say, no, Akanji's no good in that role, but I'll cut him some slack, and we'll leave it there for part 1. We'll come back and discuss a few more talking points from the Chelsea game and the press conferences before and after.
we've teamed up with Manchester City to bring one listener the ultimate Manchester City fan experience. Immerse yourself in City's state-of-the-art stadium tour experience, featuring all three of the treble winners' trophies, as well as a first-hand feel as you walk out from the Etihad Stadium glass tunnel. But that's not all. Not only will you have a full tour of the stadium in all its glory, you will sit in Pep Guardiola's seat on the touchline to soak up that matchday feel, as well as experience the newly updated virtual press room where you can sit next to the likes of Pep Guardiola himself, Manuel Akanji, Nathan Ake, and Erling Haaland. If you want to be in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize, all you have to do is subscribe to the Talking City podcast and leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and email a screenshot with your name, location, and contact information to talkingcitypod, that's talkingcitypod @gmail.com, and we will announce the winner very soon. Good luck.
Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Now, before the Chelsea game, Simon, you got Pep on a little bit of a rant about whether City are boring or not, recalling Gary Neville's comments. In our last podcast, we were asking, is the Champions League boring? Are City boring in that respect, that they're going to win all the time? Neville was saying sort of similar, wasn't he? And Pep had a bit of a spiky answer by saying it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, I mean, he was spiky all afternoon, wasn't he? But he didn't bite very much. But when you sort of saw the words in the cold light of day, basically sort of said anyone worth their salt in world football knows how difficult it has been to achieve what we have achieved. I just think it's absolutely crazy that, you know, we're 8 years into Guardiola at City. And people are still sort of, and not just people, like, you know, Neville's one of the leading pundits in the game and saying, yeah, they're too boring to watch. I didn't bother watching them. It's, I don't know, you know, I struggle to believe that people have that opinion, and like, a game at Copenhagen might not sound the most exciting, but, you know, we were sat in the press box and some of the moves City were putting together, you were just like, oh my God, this is brilliant to watch. Like, it really is amazing. In much the way that Roy Keane kind of went back at Neville and said, no, it's excellent. Like, their football that they play is amazing. It's outstanding. Like, they should be given every bit of credit. But, you know, it seems a bit just disingenuous almost to sort of be sort of trying to do down what City are doing. You know, obviously there's the charges over their head, which will very much affect how the club's successes looked over the last decade, but you can't really use that to diminish what the team are doing right now on the pitch. And yeah, Guardiola kind of laughed. I think that was the biggest response, because I'm not sure if he'd been briefed on it or not beforehand, but, you know, he just kind of laughed in thinking, why the hell do I have to go through this again? When the comments were put to him. But, you know, I suppose Gary Neville couldn't watch United in the Champions League because they didn't make it past the group. And
if you was watching United against Luton yesterday,
not
boring, but not for the reasons he wanted.
Or United at Copenhagen was terrific excitement. It was just a terrible result for them.
And I think we were talking before about the goal City conceding, but the fact that they are conceding those goals, it makes it not boring, because there is some jeopardy in the games as well.
Yeah,
they're not a perfect side.
No. And I think as well, people have a tendency to sort of generalise City and say, oh, they're winning all the games again. Oh, it's the same thing, like same old City. Like, no, like the City team in certain years would never give up a lead, or they'd never go behind. The City team this year frequently goes behind and has to fight back and claw their way into games. So, you would say with this City team, before you comment on them, how about giving them a watch? Watch them, see what they do differently, see what they do the same, and then form an opinion. Don't just kind of, base your opinion on not watching them or, seasons gone by, because there's a hell of a lot of change in the summer transfer window, but the club is also changing. And even like the Everton game, the formation, it was like, right, we've never seen this before with City, but off we go. So yeah, it's just, I do think it's a shame that there's so much kind of talk around City that isn't necessarily based on having seen or looked at what they do or understand what they do.
So yeah, Gary, have a watch of City and come back to us and we'll have a chat. Leading on a little bit, one player who you would categorise as exciting, but I don't think took his chance against Chelsea, is Jeremy Doku. So he came in for the injured Jack Grealish. We talked last week about, does he actually have much of an end product? Do his sort of attacking teammates know what he's going to do? And I felt he was sort of caught between the two minds of going direct and trying to make an impact against Chelsea, but also trying to do what Guardiola wants him to do, which is pass back. And I don't think he made the right decision often enough. And if we talk about Jack Grealish, who's very good for slowing down the attack, but creating an overload, I think Doku just slowed down the attack. And it felt like this was one of his big chances to show Guardiola that he can play in these bigger games, and I don't really think he took it. What did you think about Doku's performance?
I've ruined Jeremy Doku for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I loved watching him until last Friday, and then you've pointed out his flaws, and I can't unsee them.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be careful because I sound like a paid up member of the Grealish Appreciation Society, and it's one of those, when Doku signed, we thought, well, this is going to be really interesting because he's not the kind of winger at all that City have made their success on for the last few years. And, he has been very exciting to watch, and he is exciting to watch. And I thought he played okay against Chelsea. I thought he was sort of one of the livelier ones in the first half, was trying to make things happen, beating men. But I'm just not sure still that him playing well necessarily means that City play well. And that is where sort of Grealish is the ultimate kind of team player of his role being so important to the collective success. Whereas Doku, it just doesn't quite feel like he's on the same kind of wavelength at all times with his teammates. And he got did he get 4 assists against Bournemouth in the 6-1? So he's not put up an assist in another Premier League game. So you talk about end product, and ultimately it's there, and sometimes it comes down to whether the strikers take the chances, but he just isn't quite doing it feels in much the same way as kind of Akanji to Stones is a drop down. It feels like you're not quite getting that same level on the left side that you would with Grealish performing well, and we've kind of seen it in a week with Grealish doing so well at Copenhagen.
It comes down to injury, doesn't it? If Grealish is fit, he starts that game, and Bernardo would also start potentially in place of him, or Julian Alvarez. But then I do think Doku is at a stage now where he's probably the player to play against Brentford rather than Chelsea and Bournemouth and those sort of not as important games where you can afford to give your sort of first choice player a rest, and the defences who you can have a run at, and you're probably going to get past 9 times out of 10 because he is a very good player. I just don't think he looks like a player who is playing for Guardiola for the first time and is still trying to work out what that means. And you can compare him to Cole Palmer, and we've done the Cole Palmer chat to death, but they were born, I think I mentioned on Saturday, they were born 3 weeks apart. And I thought that was Palmer's best performance at the Etihad. He looked like a more complete player and someone who'd been coached by Guardiola for 2 and 3 years. because he was just making the right decisions. And Doku hasn't quite got that, but I think it'll come with time.
Yeah, and I think, you can compare Doku to, say, Leroy Sané in his first year, and it does just need that time. And you also look at City's movements in the next summer window with Savio, and it feels like they're moving more towards that kind of winger. So it's not like Doku's going to be written off and discarded or anything like that. I think he will only get more important, but it was kind of telling after, a month of Grealish not starting, that just 20 minutes in Copenhagen, and it was like, right, everything feels balanced in the City side again. And then, as we've spoken about at length, something just wasn't quite right against Chelsea. And, some of that was player performance, some of that was individual. But I think a part of it was losing that kind of anchor on the left side. Because, Doku, like I say, did well in certain parts of the game, but ultimately kind of didn't do enough.
Before we look ahead to Brentford, I wasn't in Pep's press conference at the end, but there was talk of Kevin De Bruyne. Does he start playing deeper, or is he more of a number 10? What was Guardiola saying about that, and where would you see De Bruyne's best position?
Yeah, it was really interesting, actually. It was one of those that wasn't like the headline, but Guardiola was basically asked, Kevin was playing in the final third. Do you see him kind of moving deeper as his career progresses or whatever? And Pep was like, no, absolutely not. Need him in the final third. Like, I don't want him defending next to Rodri. And it's interesting because, most players, as they age, move back on the pitch, either from striker to attacking mid to midfield, like, Wayne Rooney or someone like that, or, from defensive mid to centre back. And De Bruyne, I think he mentioned it last year, like, he's going the other way. He's going further up the pitch as his career moves on. And he has had that time as kind of this quarterback, and, Roberto Martinez at Belgium quite often used him as a sort of deep lying midfielder because his vision's so extraordinary. But Guardiola is saying, no, absolutely not. Like, his defensive side of the game is not where his talent lies. I want him pushed up the pitch as far as he can be to influence the final third of the pitch, because the final third is, where Pep says to his team, you have the quality, you go and do it. So there's no one better in the world than De Bruyne for doing it. It does mean games like Chelsea that Julian Alvarez isn't defending next to Rodri, and that isn't the best because you've got a number 9, for all his defensive work. There are better ways of balancing your team than having Alvarez defending next to Rodri. So, Saturday was kind of, it exposed a few things that weren't quite there, but I think De Bruyne playing high up the pitch will be one to stay.
You can't argue with Pep at all when he says that, because De Bruyne is a number 10 and he's great at it. But I think, when you've got Alvarez and Foden and Bernardo all trying to occupy the same spaces, it felt like there was too many cooks in attack at times against Chelsea, and then a big gap to Rodri on his own. So when John Stones comes back, that doesn't happen. And if Bernardo's there as well, he can sort of float in those spaces because he's got that ability as well. But I think there are some games where you might need De Bruyne to step back and say, actually, no, you do need to look behind you a little bit. However sort of good you are going forward and putting those balls in attack, there might be a need to sort of help Rodri out sometimes. But then you see him sort of striding through the midfield and playing in a through ball to Haaland or putting in one of those crosses, and you need him in that area. But you mentioned the sort of him playing as a quarterback. I'd love to see that just for a little bit, sort of him playing a bit further back and just sort of spraying passes like a little bit, maybe like Steven Gerrard used to do, or it would sort of sacrifice and take away from what he could do in the number 10 position. But as an experiment, I think that would be really interesting to see. But it sounds like we're not going to see it at City at all. So I think that's the end of our Chelsea chat. We'll come back and look ahead to Brentford, because the games are coming 2 or 3 days, 2-3 times a week now, and we've got to keep up with them. So join us again in a second. Hello, welcome back to our final part of the Talking City podcast. A couple of things to bring your attention to. City launched a new trial, didn't they, on Saturday for getting fans to the games a little bit more easily. A number of new bus routes for sort of areas of Manchester that aren't served by trams or other sort of public transport. Our producer Seb got on one of those buses and sort of assessed it for us and looked at what it was like and the pros and cons of it. Si, you've seen the video, you've looked at the plans. What can you tell us about this new initiative?
Now, I'm not saying Seb thought the buses were more important than the match, but I was getting phone calls from him about it sort of at 5:28 on Saturday. You know, like, there is another thing happening today. I think there were a few teething issues that will be in the video, and but also, you know, it's not really kind of the finished article. It's the start of a big trial that City are doing. So I think the sort of biggest takeaway from that is that if you were on a bus, it's kind of important to say what you think and make sure the club know if you think there's a problem or if you think it's great. What works and what doesn't, and they will kind of continue evaluating that. I didn't realise the buses had sort of park as far away from the ground as they did, but then when I got told kind of the reasons for it, I was like, all right, I suppose, yeah, fair. So it's all those things, but you know, hopefully the video will answer those questions for a lot of people who might be saying, well, why is this or why is that? It should really explain a lot that isn't necessarily apparent with kind of what's out there already.
And if it helps some people get to the game a lot easier, because we know the buses can be awkward if you've got to get 3 or 4 and there's no tram network. That video will be coming on Wednesday, and you can check that out and see if those buses are something for you going forward. We've also got an interview with David Bernstein coming this weekend. The former City chairman has spoken to us about his memories and experiences leading City before the current era, and that will also be coming in written form and also on the podcast and on YouTube. So look out for that. We've got a few things coming up as well. I'm going to plug one of my pieces coming up. I spoke to the academy director, the new man in charge of the academy, Thomas Crooken, and I'm not quite sure when that's coming out, but a very interesting chat with him about his plans for making City the sort of university of football and sort of finding what the player of the future looks like. You were mentioning, Si, before about Doku and Savio being sort of the new sort of attacker that City are looking for, and it seems like the academy are looking for quicker, more technical players, because in 10 years' time, that's where they see the game going. So how do they put things in place now to make sure that they can develop those players for the future and get a little bit ahead of the game? Because the academy have been so successful. How do you build on that and make sure it's successful for another 15, 20 years? But before that, we have a game against Brentford to come up. And then it's a bit weird. They've played Brentford twice in a few weeks, haven't they? Because of that delayed. This is the rearranged game from the Club World Cup. Lost twice against them last season. Ended that duck at the G-Tech. It's probably a welcome fixture to have after the Chelsea one, not an easy one, but a one where they can get themselves back into the stride and put a little bit more pressure back on Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal, wouldn't it, would have been to sort of beat Chelsea and have Brentford beat Liverpool on Saturday, and then Brentford kind of say, "Oh, right, pressure off. We've done our big thing for the week, and you know, we don't mind not coming away with the 3 points at the Etihad." So Brentford losing kind of and a big defeat really at home to Liverpool kind of adds to their incentive for getting something on Wednesday, and they were on the end of a few questionable refereeing decisions as well that they weren't too happy with. So that they will be very difficult to beat. And you know, Guardiola talks about his team not being on it against Chelsea. Well, they are going to have to be on it against Brentford because they are one of the smartest teams. Thomas Frank is one of the best coaches in the league for setting up against City and the top teams. So it's nice that they have this game at home. And you know, I thought the crowd were terrific on Saturday with the 5:30. Maybe usually less good in midweek, but hopefully they can bring that level of atmosphere again and can sort of G City up for this game, because it was the game where City could go top, and now it's the game where City have to win to stay close to the top, because Liverpool play Luton on Wednesday night at home, which you would expect them to win. So anything less than a win for City, and you're suddenly talking about being more than a win away.
At the risk of repeating everything that Kyle Walker told us in the mixer, he was saying it would have been really, really good, and they were eyeing that opportunity to go top of the league, even if it was just for temporarily. But he was also saying that in the next week or so, because Liverpool are in the Carabao Cup final, they will be on a level playing field with Liverpool and Arsenal after this game. So it seemed like they're quite keen to get themselves on that sort of level. Everyone's played the same amount of games, and then go from there and see what they can do. I think you mentioned Liverpool have had a big win against Brentford. Arsenal put 5 against Burnley. City are 4 or 5 goals now behind in the goal difference as well. There's a few points between the sides, but that goal difference could be important as well. And these are the games where City have struggled against Brentford in a lot of the recent meetings, and it might be an opportunity where they do have to not just win the game, but maybe get a few goals as well. There's a lot of games to play, and the head-to-head games will be important, but that is another sort of side thing that I think might have to be kept an eye on. You're laughing, is that
I would just be very surprised if they were to win big against Brentford. You know, every game
I agree.
They've had against Brentford, it has been tough. So I'd be very surprised if they're looking at this game thinking, right, here's a chance to stick 10 past them and get the goal difference up. It's more a case of sort of eking out a win and taking that and going from there. I think I wrote on Saturday that City were top scorers in the division, and now they're very much not, because Arsenal won big. And, you know, Arsenal last few games with a 6-0 against West Ham as well, they've just catapulted their goal difference up, which is an important factor in the title race. So, you know, I saw John Barnes saying recently that, you know, I think over the weekend that, you know, he still wasn't having Arsenal as title contenders, but they are, and they have to be regarded as serious. And that goal difference kind of took them above City where they were. So it's one more thing to think about. But, you know, you've got to, if you start thinking about goal difference before you start thinking about wins, then you're setting yourself up for dropping more points.
Yeah, this is it. City just focus on every game, don't they? They don't look at the bigger picture until it's sort of there. But I'm looking at the fixtures. They've got Brentford and Bournemouth this week, and then after that in the league they've got United, Liverpool, Brighton, Arsenal, Villa in a row. Now they're all going to be very difficult games, so I think these 2 games are going to be important to just get those 6 points, keep on going, and then see what you can do, especially with 2 sort of head-to-head games. Again, I asked Walker about those 2 head-to-heads, and he was like, no, we're not looking further than Brentford, and that's sort of the reason why City have done what they've done, isn't it? They only look 1 game ahead. If we do look ahead to Brentford, can you see any changes to the team? You would expect if Bernardo was fit enough to come off the bench, he might be able to play. Is there anyone else we can think is coming back?
Yeah, you would think Bernardo. You would think Stones, if he's fit enough to come in, will do. And it would be interesting to see if that is for a central defender or for Walker. And I would be I'd be surprised. I suppose Bernardo will probably come in for Alvarez, but then Alvarez played at Brentford. I think with the situation as it is, I don't think there'll be too many changes. We're kind of settling on the best lineups, so it won't be too different from Chelsea.
And that's it. And we've spoken about Doku and why he might not be the perfect player at the moment, but I could also see him starting and doing well, because I feel like it's that sort of game at home where he could have a bit of space, and if City get an early goal and get a bit of control, then that might be a game for Doku to do a little bit on the wing. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Can I get a score prediction from you, Simon?
I'll say 2-0.
I think I'll go 3-1. I can see it might even be another first goal conceded, but I think it will be. I think they've learned the lessons from last season against Brentford. I know the final day one was a City reserve team, but I think they'll win and be fairly comfortable at it, and the level of performance will probably be the same as Chelsea, but with a bit more comfortable play over the course of the 90 minutes. We'll, of course, be at the Etihad on Tuesday. We'll be at Pep's press conference today, bringing you everything he's got to say. Keep in touch with us on the Manchester Evening News, and we should be back on Friday to discuss what happened against Brentford and look ahead to Bournemouth. Follow us as ever on all the social media platforms, Man City MEN, on YouTube, on wherever you find your podcast. Give us a like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back later in the week for a bit more Talking City. Thank you.